Okay, this discourse we're going to learn is from the Friedrich Rebbe's HaMaamarim, from the Sefer HaMaamarim Yiddish, HaMaamarim, which it's called the book HaMaamarim in Yiddish. We're actually learning a translation of the Maamar. These HaMaamarim are called, people call these HaMaamarim, people call them very simple HaMaamarim. But in general, as everyone said, that the most simple concepts in Chassidus are the hardest ones to explain. They require the most explanation. So there's a lot of very fundamental things in life we're going to learn in this Maamar, and which are the hardest things to achieve. Let's go right to it. This Maamar is based on the pasuk of the mitzvah of Sefer, pasuk in Parshas Emor. Pasuk says you should count for yourself the day after Shabbos, from the day you bring the Omer, 7 weeks until you arrive the holiday of Shavuos. So the words in the Torah, you should count for yourself the day after Shabbos, is referring to the count of the Omer. Now, we don't really count the day after Shabbos, and that's why there was a lot of contention at the time of the Tzedukim, who only believed in the written Torah. They're wondering, how can you say the count after Shabbos means the day after the first? We know it means the second day of Pesach, but they said that it says in the third day after Shabbos. So why are you calling it the day after Pesach? And what we're going to see is that although the Gemara addresses this and says, the Gemara brings various proofs that the day after Shabbos must mean the day after Yom Tov, but the Gemara doesn't explain why we use that word. So we're going to explain this question, other questions. Let's learn inside. You should count for yourself on the day after Shabbos, the day that you bring the Omer Atnufa, the day that you bring the wave offering. 7 complete weeks it shall be. We need to understand what's the meaning of the word you. It says you should count for yourself. What's the emphasis of the word you? We find a similar thing in the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog. Regarding the mitzvah Lulav and Esrog, it says also that you should. Sorry about that. It says about the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog, you should take for yourself on the first day, meaning the first day of Sukkot, you should take the Lulav and Esrog. So what's the emphasis of the word for yourself? So the Gemara explains, the Lulav has to belong to you. You're not allowed to steal the Lulav. The Lulav has to belong to you. The Esrog has to belong to you. That's why if you want to use someone else's Lulav and Esrog on Sukkot, you say, can I have it as a present? Because you're not allowed to borrow someone's Lulav and Esrog. By the way, it's not so famous, but the same is also with the talis. You can't make a bracha on a borrowed talis. Talis has to belong to you. In order to make a bracha on a talis that doesn't belong to you, the person has to give you the talis as a present. So, very good question. The consensus is that you could say a bracha on a shul's talis. The halachic acrobats of why that's true is beyond the scope of this class, but it's a good question because you're right, it's not yours, but the shul gives it to the communities. Each shul is going to acquire it and give it back. But the bottom line is that you could say a bracha on shul's talis. Also, you could say a bracha on someone lends you a talis, and they don't even know this halacha that you're supposed to give it as a gift. So halacha assumes that when someone lends you a talis, it's considered like a gift, and therefore you could say a bracha on it, even though there was no explicit mention of a gift. So that's why the Torah says you should take for yourself a lulav. The Torah is emphasizing you can't be stolen. Can't be borrowed. It has to belong to you. But by the mitzvah of the Omer, why does the Torah say you should count for yourself? What's the emphasis of counting for yourself? Also, on the holiday of Shmini Atzeres, the Torah says there should be a day, the 8th day should be a day of Atzeres. Atzeres means to hold yourself back from work for you. What's the Torah emphasizing with the word for you? The Torah is emphasizing that the holiday and the sacrifices brought in the holiday should only be done by the Jewish people. I mean, every holiday is for the Jewish people. Why the Torah emphasize that only Shmini Atzeres is for the Jewish people? The answer is, during the holiday of Sukkot, 70 offerings, 70 bull offerings were brought in the Beis HaMikdash. And these 70 bull offerings were brought to elevate and to protect the nations of the world. The Gemara says that the nations of the world would know how beneficial the Beis HaMikdash is for them. They would surround the Beis HaMikdash with crystal. The 70 bulls that were brought in the Beis HaMikdash protected the nations of the world. There's another Gemara which says that, in the contrary, that the reason why every day of Sukkot we bring less sacrifices, although it's a total of 70, with corresponding nations of the world, but the reason why we bring less and less is because nations of the world get less and less. It sounds like we want them to get destroyed. It's not what it means. What it means is that the negativity that's there, the anti-Semitism, whatever it is that's not supposed to be there in nations of the world, that's not beneficial for them either, that should get less and less. But the sacrifices brought in Sukkot were explicitly to elevate nations of the world. So that's only the first 7 days of Sukkot. However, the 8th day, the sacrifices brought after the 7 days of Sukkot, the Shmini Atzeres, that's only for the Jewish people. That's why the Torah uses the word Lachem. It's a holiday for you. It's something that's just a unique holiday, intimate holiday between Hashem and the Jewish people. By the way, there's coffee here. It's kosher on Tuesdays. Tuesday is also kosher Tuesdays. Okay. There's gives a parable to explain the unique quality of the 8th day of Sukkot. The parable goes like this: a king made a party for everyone in his country for 7 days. And then the 8th day he tells his best friend, it's called after we have had the celebration for all the people of this country, now let just me and you celebrate together. That's what the pasuk means, that a Shmini Atzeres is just for the Jewish people alone. It's just a unique holiday between us and Hashem, just like a king tells his best friend, I made a party for the country, that's great. Now it's just me and you. So that's what the word Lachem means there. So Lachem always means something. Lachem by Lulav, it means it has to belong to you. Lachem by Shmini Atzeres means it's an intimate holiday between us and Hashem. But what's the emphasis in the mitzvah Sirus HaEmer? That you should count. How can you do the mitzvah of counting the Omer and not be you? So has to emphasize and say that it should be you counting the Omer. Of course you count the Omer. Who else is counting the Omer? There's coffee over here. It's kosher today. There's even milk there. Okay. Pass this gentleman a Omer. Yeah, donuts. Okay. We got it. All right. Give us an idea. Jonathan, we have Baruch Hashem, a lot of Jews over here, but someone made the suggestion we had donuts. A lot more people. Maybe people driving from Atlanta. All right. So we'll just turn the page. We're on page 177. We have a question on the table. The question is, the Torah says we count the Omer. The Torah emphasizes and says you should count the Omer. Who else should count the Omer? What's the Torah emphasizing with the word you? By the Luv and Esrig, the emphasis is that you should belong to you. On the 8th day of Sukkot, unlike all days before, only one sacrifice is brought. Why only one sacrifice? Because Hashem says it's a special day between me and the Jewish people. We have a unique relationship, and there's one sacrifice, only the sacrifice brought for the Jewish people, and emphasizing our unique bond between us and Hashem, like a king makes a party just for his friend. So that's what the emphasis of the word Atzeres Tielachem is saying, that Hashem is saying this is a holiday where there's intimacy between us, between myself and Hashem, and you. That's what the emphasis of the word Lachem is. Unlike all other days of Sukkot, where the sacrifices are about nations of the world, about them being purified, about them being elevated. But the holiday but the mitzvah Sirus HaEmer this mitzvah seems to be only a regular mitzvah. Every mitzvah is done by every person. Why did they emphasize the word lachem? By those holidays, by the mitzvah lulav, by the Shmini Atzeres, you could do it in a way that's not lachem. And therefore, the Torah has to emphasize, do it the way Hashem said so. And therefore, the Torah says, make a lachem, do it the way Hashem wants it to be done. But by mitzvah seimer, you can't make a not lachem because every person has to count the omer himself. So what then is the meaning of the word lachem? This last paragraph, the Friedrich Rebbe is not directly addressing this, but he's hinting to, I think, another opinion in the Gemara. The Gemara, the Alter Rebbe says that if someone else counts the Emer and they have you in mind, you listen to them counting the Emer, so halacha is that you could fulfill your mitzvah that way. It's not the preferred way of doing it, but you could fulfill the mitzvah that way. In fact, the Alter Rebbe even says that if you hear someone counting the Emer and you didn't have specifically in mind not to do the mitzvah, you can't count anymore at the bracha. If someone says tonight is the 8th night of the Emer, and you heard that and you didn't have in mind not to do the mitzvah, you can't say a bracha anymore because you already did the mitzvah, according to this opinion. So how come we all are doing this every night? The Chazan says the bracha. The Chazan counts the Emer. So you already did the mitzvah by hearing the Emer from the Chazan. So the Rebbe Chaim Midbrovna, he has notes in the Alter Shulchan Aruch, and he says that since you're about to count the Emer, you have an inner intent while you're listening to the Chazan. Okay, I just want to know what Emer to say. I'm not trying to be doing the mitzvah, even though that may not be the explicit thought in your brain, but that's a context of why you're listening. And therefore, there are some poskim who say that if you don't have that in mind, you just happen to pass by a minyan, the counting of the Emer, so you have to have that in mind. I don't want to do the mitzvah right now. Otherwise, boom, you can't say the bracha anymore. So that's how others explain the word lachem. What's the word lachem? They say, don't do the mitzvah through someone else counting for you. You have to say the words yourself. But according to the Alter Rebbe, you shouldn't do it this way, but it works. You could do the mitzvah Sfiras Emer by someone else saying the Emer for you. I could fulfill the mitzvah by, let's say, Aryeh, he says the Emer tonight, I hear him say the Emer, I did the mitzvah. So why does the Torah emphasize lachem? I have to count the Emer myself. I'm able to do it with someone else. So there's another meaning of the word lachem. Just like by Shmini Atzeres, the mitzvah of lulav, the word lachem tells us how the sacrifices are supposed to be brought and how the mitzvah of lulav is supposed to be done. So to the word lachem, the word for you, that's said about this mitzvah Sfiras Emer, is also clarifying to us how this mitzvah is supposed to be done. What is it? What is the way the mitzvah is supposed to be done? The Gemara explains that every person has to count. Mitzvah Sfiras Emer ain't a day mitzvah sheminis shanim shel shvita v'yevel. B'shvita yevel ksiv fartel l'choshav eshbas shanim shbez nitzrech l'speras shmishet shvita v'yevel. Mitzvah Sfiras Emer shekol achad l'tzarech l'sper. Unlike the mitzvah of Yovel, where the Jewish court counts for everybody, the court does it on behalf of the Jewish people. By Sfiras Emer, it's unique in that you can't rely on the court. Everyone has to count the Emer themselves. That's the word lachem is telling us. Don't rely on the court. You have to count yourself. But that's the simple meaning. We're going to see there's a deeper meaning as well. The Torah is saying to us, as we'll see, mitzvah Sfiras Emer is something which is personal. There are some mitzvahs which are between man and man, some mitzvahs which are between man and God, and Sfiras Emer is a mitzvah which has to do with going into yourself, figuring out who you are. Why does the Torah say you should count the Omer day after Shabbos? What connection is there between Shabbos and counting the Omer? Chassidus asks questions that aren't really legal to ask. What I mean is that the Tzedukim ask this question too. The Tzedukim say, "What are you talking about? It can't be the day after Shabbos." And the Gemara and Rabbi Kiva and the Gemara says how That's heretical to think that the day after Shabbos means literally day after Shabbos. Chassidus says, okay, but that's true. It doesn't mean that. But the Torah used that word for a reason. In other words, on the plane of the Gemara, the question is answered. The Torah says day after Shabbos. It doesn't mean day after Shabbos means day after Yom Tov. But there's a reason the Torah uses that word, and we have to know what the reason is. On the level of pshat, it's not a question. The Torah uses one word; it means something else. As often we have in the Torah uses a word that has a simple meaning, but Torah says not to work on Shabbos. So we know from the Gemara what it means. It means not to work. Day after Shabbos doesn't mean the day after Shabbos, but there's a reason the Torah uses that word. This time for me, it was growing up in fourth grade. There's a lot of questions that we weren't allowed to ask in class. I mean, Fishman like he said, for example, you can't ask what if questions because all day we drive him crazy. What if? And a similar way, there's questions that are obvious good questions that aren't acceptable questions on one level of Torah. It's so heartwarming to look at the Torah and say, no, everything has a soul. Everything has meaning. There's a meaning in everything in Torah. And therefore, every question is a good question. Yeah, in one level of Torah, this is not a question. But a deeper level, there's meaning to that too. Mishpatim. Mishpatim are mitzvahs which have explanation. Mitzvahs which are logic would dictate. But in Mishpatim themselves, there are details which are beyond logic. Chassidus says they also have meaning. There's also something that we could take for ourselves as well. It's also something that we could understand. So what's the reason Torah uses this word? So we have now two points. Number one is why did it say the day after Shabbos? And number two, why is it the Torah emphasize that you have to count? Okay, the simple meaning is because the court can't count. You have to do it yourself, but let's go deeper. We also need to understand why the Torah emphasizes that the Omer offering, the barley offering that was brought on the second day of Pesach, is called the wave offering. Why is that the emphasis over here? Next page. The Torah says, count 7 weeks, they shall be complete. What's the point of emphasizing they should be complete? Count 7 weeks, and once you count 7 weeks, you have 7 complete weeks. So what's the addition of saying Tmimus Tiyana? They have to be complete. Again, this is not really a question on pshat level. On pshat level, one explanation is that if you missed one day of the Omer, you can't continue counting. Or halacha says if you travel during Sefer Omer and you miss a day, you travel to Australia, so you have to count your holiday of Shavuos should begin a day later. You travel the date line. You have to count a day earlier. You have to count the Omer according to your personal count. It has to be complete 7 weeks. You can't rely on what someone else did. Your holiday of Shavuos has to do with your counting. So, but the question is, it says in Torah 7 weeks. Torah emphasizes the word Tamimus have to be complete. What's it saying to us? What's the Hira b'nefesh Adam? The Zohar says on the pasuk, Zeisa Torah Adam. This is a Torah, a man. The end of the sentence is a man who dies, whatever. But the Zohar says Zeisa Torah Adam. Says the Zohar, what is Torah? Torah is a man. When everyone in Torah has a connection to who we are. So what is the message over here with the Torah saying that the Omer has to be complete? Kitzer. First of all, we asked about the meaning of the word lachem. You should count. We explained what the word lachem means by lulav and esrog, that has to belong to you. We also explained why Shmini Atzeres says the word lachem, that's a unique holiday between Hashem and the Jewish people. We asked, how is it possible to count the Omer and then not be you counting it? Torah says you should count it. How can you count it without you counting it? We also asked about the inner bond between Shabbos and counting the Omer, and also what is the meaning of the wave offering, and what's the meaning of it being complete? Okay. Mr. Hashem, this mimer is unique in that it explains the 7 spheres in detail. I know Rabbi Jacobson and Gesund wrote a whole Sefer about how to rectify every one of the 7 character traits and what you should do to rectify your character traits. And a lot of what Chassidus says about the Midas isn't really explained in Chassidus. I think he had to use a lot of an interpretation to make that book. But this Maimer is unique. The Friedrich Rebbe explains in detail every one of the 7 Midas, what they are, and also the subcategories of the spheres and how they have to. So it doesn't explain all of them, but the first 7 Midas of Chesed, you get a full picture of what the Midah really is. It's a unique thing, and you always hear Chesed, Chesed, and you're like, what does that even mean? But Mitzvah Hashem, we'll see in this Maimer what the subcategories of each sphere are. But before we do, let's go to his base. Let's understand what the Sphere Seimer mean in a personal level. By the way, if you have any questions on the first chapter, please jump in.
Are you sitting in the right seat? I feel like you're next to the sliding door versus on the left by the bookcase.
Sorry, Zev. Sorry for the.
I feel the whole feng shui of the class is thrown off.
Okay, well, we'll try to figure things out for tomorrow, Zev. Thank you for pointing that out. Feng shui is something we got to work on. Okay. All right. Next paragraph. Next chapter. The sacrifice of the Eimer was from barley. From the 5 kinds of grain. Barley is one of the 5 kinds of grain. What's unique about barley is that barley is called animal food. As opposed to wheat, which is called human food, barley is called food for an animal. And that's why it says that in general, it's not really kosher to bring barley for sacrifices, but there are exceptions. 2 sacrifices which are brought from barley. There is the Omer. There's also another sacrifice. Anybody know the other sacrifice? Seita, very good. The Seita. And the Gemara says, why should she bring her sacrifice from barley? Because she did an action of an animal. She was unfaithful to her husband, acting like an animal. Therefore, a sacrifice is an animal sacrifice. So as we'll see, Chassidus says that's why we learn the tractate of Seita in the high time of Sefer Eimer, because the focus of Sefer Eimer is about changing the animal part of ourselves. When we daven with our neshama. Neshama is what davens. And the siddur is written in the language of the neshama. That's why the whole siddur says, help us, heal us, bless us. Why is it in the plural? What do I care about someone else? I'm asking for me. Because my neshama cares about everybody. So my neshama is talking in davening. But there were chassidim, whenever they daven, they would translate the davening in Yiddish because they wanted their animal soul to participate in davening as well. They says not to do it nowadays, but what they wanted to do with translating the davening is that it should engage the animal as well, which is the goal of davening. It shouldn't only be the neshama. It should start. The neshama taka is what davens. But you don't only want the neshama to daven. You also want to engage the animal, and that's what the Omer is about. The Omer is about lifting up the animal within us. The way the Omer was brought was that every step of the way of offering the Karban Omer was tripled. How so? 3 measurements of fresh produce were brought into 3 different baskets. 3 measurements in 3 baskets. It says in note 16 that 3 sa is equal to 1 ephah, and the volume of an ephah is 25 liters. And they would roast the barley in a special vessel so that the fire should singe all of the produce, of all the barley. Then they would grind the kernels of barley, and they would sift the flour in 13 sieves. And from all of these seeds, the 25 liters, they only were able to extract 1/10 of that, which is 1 isarim, which is 2.5 liters. From the 25 liters, they sifted and sifted, made it finer and finer flour until they only extracted 2.5 liters from the whole thing. The reason why the Omer sacrifice is animal food is because a person has within himself a human part of himself and an animal side. Who is the man within us? The man within us is an neshama. The reason why an neshama is called man, because the word Adam comes from the word similar. It says in the pasuk Adam le'elyon, a person is similar to the Eibishter. The neshama is created in the image of man, just like the Eibishter contracted himself to 10 spheres, so too the neshama has 10 parts of it as well. What's the primary part of the neshama? The most important part of the neshama is its intellect. And the feelings of the neshama, are the midas of the neshama, the character of the neshama, is based and guided and governed by its intellect. The animal soul is our natural self, our character, our natural character. Our natural character, our human character, not our neshama's character. The animal soul has character as well. And this, just like by an animal has intelligence, some level of intelligence, but its intelligence is just used to satisfy its instincts. So too by the animal soul has its feelings. And its intelligence is only about satisfying whatever it wants. In other words, the animal soul is selfish. Whatever it sees in the context of what is after with me. And its intellect is all about its intellect is all about trying to get whatever it wants to get. The previous Rebbe said the difference between the is it coffee over here, Rebbe? Oh, it's great, Rebbe. You just made a binyan about the Shekhinah. I wrote to Rebbe a few weeks ago about the shir. Rebbe said we should make sure to have a minyan by the shir. So you did it. You made the brother Shekhinah here. Thank you very much. So the previous Rebbe said that the three souls that we have ask different questions about everything we see. The three souls are the animal soul, the intellectual soul, and the godly soul. The animal soul's question about everything we see is, what's in it for me? What does that have to do with me? And it uses intelligence to figure out what it has to, whether it's attracted to it, not attracted to it, and therefore uses intelligence. How do I get it, or how do I distance myself from it? The intellectual soul is more scientific, but it's not purely scientific. It asks all the questions that need to be asked about something, but intellectually, scientifically, except for the most important question. Intellectual soul asks, what is this thing? What are its properties? What is it? What is it? Not selfish, but objectively, what is it? But the godly soul asks the most objective question and only asks that question. The godly soul's question is, and everything is, where does it come from? Where does it come from? How is it here? What's its purpose? So the neshama's question is always leading it to be a chacham. What's a chacham? A chacham, as in Pirkei Avos, ezeu chacham, who is a wise person? Someone who could see the outcome. So Chassidus explains that it doesn't just mean that you know the outcome. It means that you could see the outcome in front of your eyes. You see now where this is going to lead in the future, and therefore you act now as if the outcome has already happened. So Chassidus explains that on a spiritual level, the outcome, the birth, is the creation of the world. Every moment God creates the world. So the neshama is always looking at the outcome, at the birth of creation. The neshama always realizes that every moment Hashem is bringing the world to existence. That's what the neshama is thinking about. What does the animal soul think? The animal soul is a whole different perspective. What's in it for me? So the neshama and the animal soul are completely the opposite. And the intellectual soul is a bridge between them. And the intellectual soul carries over the neshama's ideas towards the animal soul, so that the animal soul could appreciate the truth of the Hashem. And that's what character refinement means. It means that that your neshama explains to the animal soul why Hashem is good for it. Why Hashem isn't, why Torah and mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit, it's not, don't ignore your selfish nature. The godly soul tells the animal soul, be selfish, but realize if you're really selfish, the best thing out there is the Yiddish. The best thing out there is Torah and mitzvahs. Abba Yitzchak used to say, so what do the goyim have anyways? They have chazir. I don't want it anyways. He says, if Torah mitzvahs is the truth, it's nothing better. If it's not, they have chazir. So that's the neshama talking to the animal soul. Saying the animal soul, what are you interested in? What do you have? Is that really what all there is? So that's a conversation. That's where character refinement happens. Character refinement happens by, as the Rebbe Rashab says, in meditation. At length there are three. I believe it's Yiddish. Rebbe Rashab said meditation means three things: thinking about how things should be, how things could be, and how things are. But or as one of my friends put it, meditation is thinking about something in a way that you could explain it to your mother. Talking to yourself and explaining to yourself in a way that your mother would say, "Oh, that makes sense." Jewish mothers are they see where you're trying to be. Go beyond your britches, and you're not speaking straight, and they get you. So that's a conversation. The Gali is only animals. What time is it? Let's do. Oh, okay. So in short, that's the reason why we bring the animal sacrifice at this time, because the goal of the Sefer Emer is to elevate the animal. So much we'll see tomorrow more about that. Any questions, comments, criticism, tomatoes and cucumbers? Yeah. How things should be, how things could be, and how things are. I think keep it here or bring it back tomorrow. If you want to take it with you. You can take it, bring it back, yeah.